So this is the AZ-305 office hours. And if you've been following my posts, the way we're going to tackle this office hours is a little bit different than the office hours that Maria and I have done. We're going to tackle it by talking the first half about case study questions, because those are the ones that, I know when I'm delivering classes, I get a lot of students. How do you tackle it? And I'll be honest, sorry, my window's wide open and I have a noisy streets in the morning when it's traffic commute time, which is commuting time right now. But yeah, so I'll be honest, like when I take a exam that has case study questions, I find the case study questions the easiest. And so you're probably all going, yeah, she's the little, but it's seriously, I find them the easiest to tackle because there's a way to do it. There's a method that Maria and I are going to show you. And I have to kind of talk about these pictures. Maria's looking at these pictures going, oh no. First of all, Maria generated this one. We found out Maria and I have been working together for going on, it's definitely been 4 years, hasn't it? Has it been 4 years? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've been working together for about 4 years, and Maria you live in Stockholm, Sweden, and I live just outside of Toronto. So we've never met, and this is how we talk to each other every day, right? And so when we found out we were all going to Vegas for our, they call it a sync week, Maria made this picture with AI. And then finally we went to the Strat, and that's actually the two of us in person. And yes, she really is that tall, and I'm really that short. We were walking down the street and we're like this. I'm 5 foot. And how tall are you, Maria?
Over 6 foot.
Yeah.
6 foot. Yeah.
So you can see the two of us walking together down the street. And it was funny because I showed this picture to my kids and they're like, who's the little kid beside the lady? And I'm like, screw off. Anyway, so that's just kind of what those pictures are about. Anyway, so Maria, did you have anything you want to start with before we get into the case study questions? Any comments or want to say hello or?
No, so yeah, hello everyone. So yeah, you introduced me well. So, and I can also say that I taught an AZ-305 last week. So that's also where I get told some of what people find more challenging with the course. So that's also something we can talk a little bit more about.
Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, after you do the case study questions, yeah, I'll throw it to you and then you can share your screen and do all that talk about that. That's
Hello?
awesome.
Hello?
Hey,
Hello?
Alfred, we can hear you. Did you have a
Oh,
question?
sorry.
No, no.
No, not at this time. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. No, that we encourage coming off mute. Even if you want to turn on your camera as well, feel free. This is a learning community where we can all talk and chat with each other. Okay, so when it comes to case study questions, and here I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. I really don't. I was complaining about whiteboard because one thing with whiteboard now is you have to use the arrows to move around on the page. Before I could just drag. Now I can't drag anymore. Anyway, not complaining. So when we think about case study questions, or there's also another term you sometimes see it as. Is it scenario? It doesn't really matter. But what it is you're going to get a fictitious, say that 5 times fast and try and spell it as well, fictitious company, right? And if you ever looked up and did a Google, I didn't say that, a Bing search for Microsoft fictitious companies, there's actually a Wikipedia page out there. And if anybody wants to have some fun and find that for me and post it in the chat, that'd be awesome. But there's a Wikipedia page out there of all of the fictitious companies that Microsoft, I guess you could say, and I'm doing air quotes, owns, because if you actually go to like say the one that I always use, my favorite one is like Fabricam, right? And Fabricam, if you go to fabricam.com, they all resolve to Microsoft.com. So Microsoft, has registered, I think, a majority of them. I'm not sure all of them and they all go to Microsoft.com. But what's going to happen is you're going to get this fictitious company. And one of the things they do is they will give you one fictitious company and you'll get about 5 questions on average, right, Maria? Usually 5, right? For the same company. Usually, yeah. For the same case study, you'll get about 5 questions, and they're going to be different questions. They're going to test you, on, the skills like networking, or could be a question on security, or it could be a question on data, or it could even be a question on migration, so they'll vary the questions, but it's all about this fictitious company. And so when I get these types of questions, and here I've got an example over here, is you look at it and you can see this one is, let me zoom out a little bit here. Northwind Traders, actually. Not quite showing nicely. Oh, there, you can see it. I apologize if it's hard to read. So when we look at this, the first thing I always do is if it's in an exam center, so you're actually live at the exam place, they'll give you like a piece of paper, but it's the dry erase paper with a pen. And I immediately grab my pen and paper, right? And if it's virtual, oh, thanks, Naveed. You found it. Awesome. Bonus points for Naveed. And if it's I'm at home, then the whiteboard that they give you is through the app, which has gotten better. And that's because you're welcome. I've complained every time I've done an exam. I'm like, the whiteboard keeps doing this. And so finally, the whiteboard is a lot more stable than it used to be 2 years ago because of me. It's probably because of me complaining all the time, because I'm a big whiteboarder. So the first thing I do is grab that piece of paper and pen, and then I start reading this, like the background. This is the only thing that I read, like fully. And I'll read the background and I'll sit there and I go, okay, so they're, is it not gonna, sorry. Yeah, it's not gonna let me write on that. So I'll sit there and I'll go, oh, they're a logistics company. And I'll make key points. Look at the key words. Actually, I'll just circle it. So they're a logistics company. They manage the transportation of goods across. And here's what is in that one sentence. I'm trying to move over here. This one sentence, what do you think is one of the most important keywords besides, logistics company that I circled? But what's another keyword in there that you should really pay attention to? Anyone know?
Various regions.
Yeah. Awesome. Regions. Various regions. That right there goes ding ding, and my brain goes, oh, so we're going to be talking about, front door, right? Traffic manager. We're going to be talking about high availability across these regions. Chances they're going to be probably wanting to deploy things. Think about other things like disaster recovery. So they're going to be talking about site recovery. So think about all of the, as architects, especially for this is an AZ-305 example. As architects, think about all of the services and capabilities in Azure that gives you a support across regions, and have that in the back of your mind. You can even write it out, right? So when you write down regions, you can even say, what are my things like, front door, traffic manager, disaster recovery. So that's using ASR, Azure Site Recovery. These are all things that you can think about. And then and then it goes on and it says the company has a complex IT infrastructure that includes both on-premises and cloud components. Pause. Okay. What do you get from that sentence? What type of deployment do they have based on that sentence?
Hybrid.
Hybrid. You got it. Nice. So then I would write that. So as you can see, when you're reading through this, your piece of paper and pen or whiteboard is going to save you, because just select the key things, right? regions, they are hybrid, and now they're in the process of modernizing the infrastructure to improve efficiency, security, and scalability. Okay, so you don't really need to grab anything from that sentence, but that's what I always do. Always get the background right off the bat, right? And then we look at their current environment, and that's another thing that I'll also read through as well, is I'll read through the current environment and I'll see, what they have. So they got on-premise environment, they've got Active Directory, SQL Server, legacy applications running Server 2012, and then VMware, right? And I'll even take these, the main key ones, right? Server 2012, and then VMware, those, and I'll write those all out as well and put it under my on-premises. And then now you've got the background in the current environment. And now at this point, you really don't need to go back to those, right? You don't need to reread them, so just quickly write that all out. And the other thing too is when I do this and I write it out, it helps me zone in on the question and really focus on that, right? Like going through that. Maria, is there anything else that you might want to suggest in the background or on premises?
No, I guess I do like you do, and I more focus in on some things, because if you start to just read everything and then just start to go through, the entire setup that they have, that's going to feel very like intimidating. So I would say I do like you, just focus on these little key words and attack the question like that.
Yeah. And the other thing too is even don't, for me, and I think Maria, you probably do this as well, is that with this, I actually draw it out, right? So I'll go in and I'll do this. This is what I do. I go ADDS, right? Because that's their Active Directory environment. And then I'll go SQL, because I'm a very visual learner and I'm a very kinesthetic learner. If I read something, I can't just read something. It doesn't go into my brain. And I think a lot of people are like that, especially in this day and age, right? So I always have to draw it and look at it. So visual and kinesthetic learning. And then I'll see the legacy applications. So I'll go server 2012, and then I'll create an application, right? And then I'll even say and then that they're using VMware. So even drawing it out like that might help, because the next step, if they start asking you about, connectivity and all that, then you can start drawing out, what they're asking you and kind of join and build that. Okay. So now let's look at, so this environment right here and the networking and security and all of that, I just I don't read all that. Right? So when the question says, and they give you, this, I took this question from Copilot, generated this question for me, by the way. All I did is I did a Copilot prompt and I said, give me a case study question that's very detailed on for AZ-305. And this is what it gave me. But a lot of times what you'll see in the exam is that the case study questions will have planned environment, they'll have security requirements, they'll have business requirements. What else am I missing, Maria? Planned, security, business, and then networking.
Yeah.
What else have we seen?
Governance.
Governance, yep. So they'll have these different sections about, what is, and they're usually the requirements. So for example, if you see one that says security requirements, then, it'll say something like this, right? It needs an on-premise firewall, intrusion detection system, and they want to use Azure Security Center for cloud security management. Do I read all through that? No. And this is the part where you're going, what? You're not reading the requirements? No. Don't fill your head with all of this, because you will only need 5 or 10% of it for each question. See what I'm saying? Each question is going to focus on a service. Like they're going to focus on a security requirement. So why are you reading all about the networking and all the other types of requirements? So what I do is I'll skip all of those big paragraphs about all of what they need, and I'll scroll and I'll just go to the question. And the question in this one is, oh, and sometimes you'll see the problem statement. That I would read as well. But I feel like in the last case study questions, I never saw a problem statement. I don't know. I don't know if any of you, did you remember seeing a problem statement in your last exam, Maria? I feel like that's
I know there has been where they mentioned some of the challenges they have, or some of the technical, requirements. So it would be technical requirements or challenges. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's the wording that's throwing me off. Copilot didn't get the exact wording. But yeah, so you'll see challenges, technical requirements. Yeah, something like that. So these when I see these problem statements, yes, I do recommend you read them, right? And then, so for example, so let's read this one. Northwood Traders is facing challenges with the performance and scalability of their on-premises structure. Okay, I'm gonna pause right there. As architects, what would you, when you see performance and scalability of their on-premise infrastructure, what is an Azure service that can help with that? Yell it out, throw it in the chat. What are some Azure services that can help with that? With performance and scalability.
Virtual machine scale sets.
Yes, very good. Right? That actually encompasses both. You could do, like, if you do availability sets. So what's the difference between an availability set and a virtual machine scale set? What do you think? Because this is a really good AZ-305, topic. Well, here, let's break it down. This is a really good thing.
Something that has to do with something that's as far as available, and
Yeah.
ones that are on demand.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. You're absolutely right. So think about the difference, right? Like when we think of VM scale sets and availability set, the difference between these two is there is really one word, right? And when we think about availability sets are built across what we call fault domains, right? And they also use something called update domains. Now, a domain is an availability. So when you think about these fault domains, so let's say you've got 3 fault domains that you're using, these fault domains are their own not segregated, that's not the right word I'm looking for. They're their own isolated, think of like, server rack, so to speak. Right? So they're their own isolated hardware. And let's say you want to deploy, 6 VMs to run a single application, right? So now you have 6 VMs that you want to run a single application, and you're going to deploy them across 3 fault domains. Then what happens is they'll get deployed across these 3 fault domains, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then what happens is if this one goes down, you still have 4, right? So that's what we call a high availability, right? So it's making you meet that SLA, right? And this is really focused on your service level agreements because you're meeting that SLA. Where scale sets is all about meeting performance. So that's the big difference between the two. Now, it can meet your SLA. It actually covers both in my mind, right? I always think to myself, availability sets are great, especially if you're doing proximity ones or placement domains. So you want to make sure they're all in the same environment or region. Sorry, my brain's not working. I haven't taught since March. So they're as long as they're all in the same zone. Oh, couldn't even think of what it was called. And then with the performance ones, these you're scaling your VMs, and actually that is horrible. Horrible drawing. I'm probably making Maria cringe here.
No.
You're gonna see when she starts drawing. So now I can't get rid of these squares. This is what happens with Microsoft Whiteboard. Is it's got this. Actually, my whiteboard's frozen. There it goes. It's got this where it will figure out what I'm trying to draw and try and snap to it. So anyway, so now you're creating VMs. So let's say you've got 3 virtual machines that are running. And then all of a sudden you hit a peak, right? So you know how sometimes you go through these different peak performances. So then what it does is it's going to scale out to a new VM when you hit a peak based on a rule you set. I know, right? Gary says you should run a diagram in class. You know, that's actually not a bad idea.
Yes.
Putting Maria to work, aren't we, Gary? All right. So this is kind of how it works. And when you think about availability sets as opposed to virtual machine scale sets, it's all about the performance that you need to meet. So for example, if you're running a bunch of VMs or running an application that has a very steady performance, but you need to meet an SLA, then use an availability set. But if you're running an application that, you know, especially with like these e-commerce applications, and let's say it's, what is it, Cyber Monday or Christmas is coming, and we know that you're going to be selling a lot, then you want to use scale sets. So as people are running into your e-commerce site, you're scaling out to meet that. And think about too, you know, who uses scale sets? Streaming channels, right? Netflix, you know, all of these streaming channels, they use scale sets to meet that performance. Now, don't get me going on how we should use scale sets more. Just kidding. Anyway, okay. So now, so that's kind of the thing when you're looking at the problem statement. So yeah, so we're looking at either virtual machine scale sets or availability sets. Yes, Ramon, you have a question.
Yeah, so if you go back to your whiteboard just for a
Yeah.
second. So are fault domains the same thing as data centers, or are these fault domains within the same data center?
Within the same data center. So yeah,
Okay.
think about the, like I said, like it's kind of like a server rack. You're having these isolated racks from each other. So in the Microsoft data centers, the services that manage the availability sets, they do have like they're isolated from each other. They're right beside each other, side by side. And what I mean by isolated is they have their own networking.
Their own hardware.
Exactly. Yeah. Good way of saying it. Yeah. And they have their own hardware. They have their own power supply. So that if the power supply goes from this guy's like, oh, I don't care. I got my own power supply, right? I've got my own networking capability and that. But you're right in assuming that this is all in the same data center. Yeah. So now availability sets can scale across data centers in the zone. So you can use availability sets in a single region across multiple zones in the data centers. Yeah. And then virtual machines.
So when you say zones, zones are the same as fault domains?
Zones are not. Zones are what zones are is in like, so for example, Canada Central, so which is in Toronto, there's 2 zones. And a zone is, if we think about a zone, so let's say we've got, you know, Canada Central. And where is that, Kristen? Kristen's laughing at me. She used to work at the data center in Toronto, and Microsoft employees aren't allowed to know where they are even, because that's how secure we want things to be. Oh, she already left. Darn it. I called her out and she left. Ah, brat. Anyway, so what happens is if you've got 2 zones, they're actually in the same proximity, but was it is it 100 miles, Maria?
Oh, no,
At the-
no, that's what I thought, but I thought I
Yeah.
heard you say 2 different zones in the same data center. That's what I thought I heard you say.
Oh, I
Oh,
apologize if I
okay,
did say
okay,
that.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And then
All
you've
right.
got in here, you can have data center 1 and data center 2, or maybe this data center has only got, zone has 1. It all depends on, you know, need, right? You know, if Toronto is really, which Toronto has grown, right? Yeah. No, great. Yeah, feel free. Thank you for the questions. So yeah, so the virtual machine scale set and availability sets, they're regional, right? So, you know, if you say, can I scale to another region with virtual machine scale set? No. Can I use availability sets across other regions? No. So, okay, let me pause on that question. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. That happens. But if I want to scale my VMs to different regions, what's the service I use for that? Does anyone know? Okay, let me rephrase that because that's not quite exactly what would happen. If I want to deploy my VMs or my applications across multiple regions, what is the service I would use?
Regional load balancer?
Yeah. You can use load balancers, right? So a regional load balancer would make sure, in this example, let me scroll down here. I could use a regional load balancer across zones, right? But if I wanted to go in and I want to introduce a new region, and I want to make my application, so let's say my app's running in here, and I also want to make sure it's running in here, and I want to make sure that people can connect to either or, what's the service I would use to support that? You got 2 choices, and it all depends. And I'm not going to go into it heavily because Maria might touch on it in a second. Because I want to finish that scenario question. You can use either Azure Front Door or you can use Traffic Manager. These are what we call our global load balancers. And so that's what's going to allow you to have the application available across regions. Okay. We'll go back
Well,
up to my question.
I have a question about that. So I
Yeah.
understand about the load balancing, but what are you actually load balancing? So if you have are you talking about like a virtual machine in one region and then
You're
another
load
virtual machine?
balancing your application. So
Yeah,
whatever
but
your
yeah,
application deploy.
but your application has to exist in both regions.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how do you take your application in one region, not load
You
balance it, but how do you put it in the other region?
would have to deploy it. So that's when you would
Okay, got
start
it.
working
Okay,
with DevOps. Yeah. So
okay,
the
all right.
our DevOps tools working with CI/CD and all of that, you as developers, they would know to whenever they need to run an update or push an application up, they would have to push it across multiple regions. And DevOps is the tool that you would use for that. Yeah. Oh, great question. And yeah, and then you can say, you know, with Traffic Manager, I can say, well, I want this, you know, the old region to be getting, you know, 80% of the calls, and then this one will take the other 20%. Or I can say this is a primary and this is just a secondary. So everybody goes to this region, and then if this region goes down, then they get sent to that one. So there's different types of routing rules that you can say based on what you require, right? It could also be because your region, you know, Maria's in Sweden, I'm in Ontario, Canada. So whenever Maria goes to the app, she should go to the region in Sweden, right? So you can say it based on proximity or geographically. So there's many ways you can manage the traffic is what I'm trying to get at. So Question. So finally, okay, so now they need to migrate their legacy applications to Azure, implement a disaster recovery plan, ensure compliance with industry standards, and optimize costs. That, you can also same thing. They need to migrate. So that with I think of the migrate tool, they need to implement a disaster recovery plan. So that to me is ASR, so the Azure Site Recovery, and they want compliance and industry standards. So that's going to be, you're looking at governance. The tools you can use with that is Purview is one of the ones I'm thinking about with compliancy, Azure policy, right? Some of the other ones, if you know of any other ones, throw it in the chat. And then optimize costs, right? So that's going to be working with your budget tool. That could be working with the cost management center. That can also work with the Azure Advisor. So these are all things that you can use to work with that. So as you're reading these problem statements and any of these things, literally write it like as your things are popping into your mind, like, oh yeah, that's Azure. Write it down, right? Because then, when you go to the question, you've written down all your quick thoughts, right? Cool. So now, which Azure service would you recommend to ensure the legacy applications can be migrated to Azure with minimal downtime and compatibility with existing systems? Okay, so you already know how to answer this because you use your handy dandy whiteboard and you know the existing systems that you're using is Server 2012 and VMware. Pause. So this answer should be extremely easy. So what is the service that Microsoft gives you that supports migrating VMware servers into Azure?
Azure Migrate.
Yeah. See how easy it was to answer that question? When I do these case study questions and I do that way I just did it, my process of answering that question, I'll sometimes have to read the question a couple times because I'll be like, that was so easy. Right? Like literally that was such an easy question to answer. And you're saying, well, that's because it's not really the exam. No, it really does get that easy. I'm not even joking you. So well, let me pull out again and give you a bird's eye view of this. So again, first things first, go through the background, look at what the company has. They'll give you little hints that they have various regions, right? And then look at their on-premises. Always write what their existing infrastructure, especially in the AZ-305 exam. My Azure Migrate's a really big topic in this exam. And then, did you just notice we skipped all that? We didn't read any of this. We didn't even read this. We knew that based on what their existing environment was, and that they don't want any downtime, and Azure Migrate gives you that capability because you can migrate in a process, then it's Azure Migrate. Any questions on that? On how to tackle case study questions? You're welcome. Yeah, it is. And it's literally it works, right? Like SC100, AZ-305, those are the two big exams that have, a lot of case study questions. Try this, right? Don't read every single word. You're going to run out of time. And it's like what Maria says, it's very stressful and overwhelming to try and take that all in, right? Right. Maria, you got any other tidbits of advice?
No, and I can say that really I have to test to use the whiteboard. I actually have never done that in the exam. So that is something that is very helpful to get. I'm also more of a visual learner, so I would need to see things. So drawing up stuff and doing that is very helpful, because you can't have, if you take the exam from home, you can't have a pen and paper. So really use that opportunity in the exam.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that, yeah, exactly. Drawing it out. If you want, you can write the words, or you can draw it out that way. I draw it out. I love writing, doing my boxes. I'm a very ugly whiteboarder, but I think it helps me. It's very, to me, like, and you'll see, like, if you ever take one of my classes, my whiteboards get really complex and lots of arrows and everything like that. But in the moment, it makes sense. And then sometimes when I go back and look at my whiteboard, I'm like, oh, what? What did I just try to write there? Anyway, all right. Maria, did you want to talk about your class last week and talk about what you found from that?
Yeah, so I can say something that is helpful. So this is, of course, an exam that covers a lot of different things. So you need to know more, as you see just in this case study here that we had a look at, that you need to know what, well, which load balancers do we have in Azure? If we're thinking of migration, for example, which tools should I use when it comes to migrating? I need to know about virtual machines, different applications. So this is something that's very useful to know, because you need to have some experience. Yeah, exactly, the study guide.
Yeah.
So here you can see more what you need to know.
Did you want to share your screen and do it?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, you have it up now. If there
Yeah.
anything that any of you struggle with, any concept, anything that you think about? So we can also cover that here. Or is it clear, for example, when it comes to the different, when it comes to applications, when it comes to different roles, for example, resource groups, how to plan for this? Policies, for example.
Where's I'm trying to look here. Compute, high availability, backup. What would you say is the big data piece in this exam? What do you need to know for data? Like, is it the event grid, and all that? Would you say those are, well, I guess that's the application architecture, isn't it?
Yeah, and then something I know that I always get in like all the courses is when you get to the data integration part.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of concepts that are very new to many.
Yeah.
So if you look at more, yeah, you see the different migration, like which tools I should choose, and you have also when it comes to data integration part.
Yeah, the learn modules, when you go to the AZ-305 course, you do a search that way and always look for the one that says course. And then this will take you to the actual learn modules. And then when you scroll down in here, you can see the kind of the different learning paths, right? So it starts with, the architect prerequisites, what you need to know before you take this course, right? It's not what you need to take the exam, it's what you need to know before you take the course. And then we get into what is the course is about. So the monitoring and the governance and the identity, business continuity, your data storage solution. So this is one that I always, I even struggle with, because I'm not a data person, that I even struggle with myself sometimes when I deliver this. But this one, as you can see, it talks about, the blob storage. It talks about data redundancy and data files and disks. Oh, I thought it got into more the it's funny, I'm teaching this class first week of December. And then, yeah, so it talks about the different types of data storage, right? And here's the thing with this architect course, it's not about, so if you're saying, well, Sarah, do I need to know how to create a shared access signature? No, that's not what this exam's about. It's about, Sarah, do I need to know when to use the shared access signature? Yes, that's what this exam is about, right? And the course. So it's about building these infrastructures and knowing when to use one over the other. It doesn't matter about how to, like, that's why when you take this course, you actually don't get labs, right? Because you're not learning the how, you're learning the why and the when, and and essentially the what, right? So the 3 W's: what it is, when you would use it, and why you would use it. How you use it, that's the AZ-104 or SC300 or AZ-700, so the other courses. So really understand, the architect side, the building of that. There is also the Azure Architecture Center. It's quite a vast site, right? Lots of information in this site. Whether you don't need to read everything in here, but obviously for the exam, but when you're getting a little stuck on a certain concept, I always recommend to jump into the architecture. So optimizing your workload and all of that, designing for the cloud. There's also, I'm actually going next week to record a virtual training day it's called Azure Essentials, and it focuses on the WAF and the CAF. So the cloud adoption framework and then the wireless framework, right? So those two frameworks, those are also key to know for this exam as well. And I'll grab that. Okay, cloud adoption. So this one is where is it? This one's good to look through. This will give you an idea before you start deploying in Azure. So what you need, and understand your intended, understand the life cycle. This goes through, and it's really interesting. The strategy, planning, getting ready, migrating, innovating, securing. Talks about all of these things, and then the come on. Oh no, what is it? Why do I always do this? The WAF. Not the web application firewall, the other one.
Well architected, yeah.
I always do that. I literally, because the web application firewall, that's my background. I used to work with that in the SharePoint. So I always think of that. So this is the well-architected framework. I called it the wireless framework, didn't I, earlier? Yes, I did.
Yes.
And this is talking about working. This is more the working with the services. So understanding the services at the service level. Whereas the cloud adoption framework is more about, I'm ready. I want to work with Azure. How do I adopt to that? And even the cloud adoption framework even goes into working with your stakeholders and building the the infrastructure of your people, right? Getting the right people on board, and so on. Whereas the well-architected framework talks about, now that you've got people adopted to your Azure, so now people are adopted, now you can start looking at how to deploy these solutions and how to create a well-architected solution. These two will definitely support you for deploying, or not deploying, but for being great Azure architects, as well as passing the exam. Questions? Maria, you got anything?
Yeah, no, also just like we said, that this is one of the I can say one of the struggles with this exam. If you don't have for example more kind of experience, I can also say one tip I can give you is the credentials. So there are have any of you taken any credential? It's also known as applied skill. Since the course itself doesn't have labs, I can highly recommend if you want to get a little hands-on experience to test out the credentials. Because you have one for networking, you have for blob storage. And it's one other. I unfortunately don't have access to the chat, or I wish I heard that. But it's I can give you the direct link because I have the direct link here. So here it is. So just give me this.
Oh,
yeah, you have that there as well. Yes.
This poster is
Browse
new as
applied
well.
skills. Yeah, or you can, yeah. So here is where you can see when it comes to infrastructure part. So you have configure secure access using Azure networking. So the first one there. Secure storage for blob files. And here's where you get to test out the endpoints. You get to also work with networking, configure Azure Monitor. So if you don't really have that experience with setting up, for example, networks or setting up a blob storage, I can really recommend these ones.
Yeah.
Because you don't, you get provided with a username and password, and there's a VM that gets that starts up, so you can test this out yourself, which is a good way to prep, especially for you prep for the exam.
Yeah, this one, I already did this one. So yeah, once you do it, then you can see you can retake them, right? Just if you want to get more practice. But yeah, you do get what we call a credential, and then obviously you brag about this all over LinkedIn. So now you can see I've gotten a few. I think I've only gotten 4, maybe 5. Oh, doesn't even. It's weird. Yeah, so you're right. So I always forget about that because you don't get that, like Maria was saying, you don't get that hands-on. So doing the applied skills and will give you, some hands-on, which will help you, like, just like Maria and I were both visual and kinesthetic learners. Yeah. Yeah, I found the architect exam. I didn't find it difficult, but what I found was that, for me, being a very visual and kinesthetic learner, I found I was drawing a lot. So when I took the exam, this was way back when, before, I think it was before COVID. Yeah, it was before COVID. So I did it in a testing center, and I asked them for 2, and they wouldn't give me 2. And I'm like, can you at least give me a wet wipe? Because I was constantly drawing. Because even though, like, it's so much reading in this exam that I can't focus, right? So I have to constantly draw. Question Ayaka has is, why some applied skills say under maintenance? That's because of our, we're going through a security big security changes using MFA on, and some of these applied skills are using, they're testing on Entra, and we can't get the MFA working properly in the labs. So that's why they're still under maintenance. So they're trying to figure out ways to deploy some of these applied skills using MFA properly. So it's kind of hard, right? Like if you're using a lab, you're gonna have to set up your own stuff, your own MFA, and so we're trying to see if we can overcome that, but still be secure. And it's been taking a while. Yeah, there is, as between you and me, there is a lot more applied skills coming out by the end of the year. There's actually been a lot that's already been released, and there's a lot more coming out. So yeah, so get your Pokemon cards.
Yeah, because there have been very many more that have come out in just the latest, and they're completely free to take. So if you want to go for all of them, you can do that. But especially for 305, the networking and blob storage is I can really recommend.
Yeah.
Monitor as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, like when I take these, I think I took this one because it's like, and I didn't pass it. I didn't pass it because I don't have that AI background, but I was like, oh, how hard can it be? was hard. It was asking me to do coding, and I'm like going, I had no coder here. And then I even, yeah, I can grab this link. I even, let me just paste that there. I even asked Copilot, and Copilot gave me information, and then I tried to decipher what Copilot said and put it in that applied skill, and I failed. Not horribly, but I failed. And I was like, okay, so if anyone tells you, unless they're brilliant, which obviously I'm not, but if anyone tells you that you can just do these applied skills and you don't have to worry about, knowing the reading the material, just use Copilot, that's not necessarily true. Because I tried it with 2 AI ones and I was like, I bombed. So, but they're all free and nobody knows you bombed unless you tell them.
Yeah, you can just test again. Up to 72 hours is all you have to wait, and then you can try again as many times as you want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any other questions anyone has, or regarding a concept or something that you think about?
Anyone taking the exam soon? You got it booked yet? Out of curiosity? End of this year? Okay, good. Lovely. So one of the things I always recommend too is do you know I found the AZ1 Gary says the AZ-104 experience puts me off. The AZ-305 exam's easier than the AZ-104. That's my personal experience. And what I think, because the AZ-104 exam is how, and it's everything, right? And it is I'll be honest, when I took that exam back in 2016, it was 70-533. Now it's AZ-104. I failed it twice. So it's okay. Just keep going. And it's like my son, he just did his Python exam and he's self-taught. He's failed it twice, but only by a small percentage. And I'm like, just keep going. You're gonna get it, right? It takes a lot of, keep trying, right? The more you work with it, like now when I look at the AZ-104 exam, I'm like, oh wow, I can't believe like back in 2016 it was so difficult, because the more you work with the product and the more you put yourself in it, you'll see how much easier it gets. And I can't stress enough that when you're looking to study for exam and you want to take an exam, book it. Book it 2 months out if you have to. It helps you, pushes you, right? Pushes you to study. And if you can't make it and you have to cancel it and reschedule, you don't get charged for that, right? There's no like penalty for that. Only if you're under 24 hours, then yeah, you lose your money. But let's say you've got an exam next week and it's a week ahead of time and you're like, oh crap, I'm not ready. Just reschedule it, right? Put yourself in that kind of that study mode. I should practice what I preach, because I still want to do SC400 and I want to do DP203. And Maria knows I've been saying that for the last year.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm the same, so I always need to book, or I need to have that focus. And yeah, so many you want to learn. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's I can say the more you take, the more fun it gets. And when it comes to YouTube, we can also, John Saville. Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
So John Saville he focuses on infrastructure. So he does the AZ-104, AZ-700, 305, 500 as well. So when it comes to more infrastructure, some security ones.
Yeah. Tiago I don't know what his channel is. Tiago Costa, I think his name. He's an MVP and MCT, and he posts a lot of videos as well. By the way, I just started something yesterday and I couldn't do it today, but I'm gonna start with these sessions in the learning room where you're gonna start seeing a lot more coming, and they're gonna be broadcast through YouTube now. So we're trying something new. We want to reach a bigger audience. I'm not saying that you're not all good enough, don't get me wrong, but we're trying to reach a great large learning audience. And I'm going to start bugging people like Maria and everybody, and I'm going to start doing, data. I want to do some data office hours. I want to start doing Tiago Costa. Thank you. Thank you. That's who it is, Barbara. I was like, I know his last name. I'm horrible with names. I see his face right now. Right? Dark hair, glasses. I know what he looks like. I'm like, hey, you? That's what I always do. So if I meet you and I know I won't know, and I know I've seen your face before, I'll be like, hey, you. But anyway. Any other questions or comments? Peter, I saw you come off mute. Did you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, it's more like a questions.
Yeah.
I actually took the AZ-500 last year.
Hard
I
one.
passed it. Now I'm studying for the AZ-104. It seems like it is like a completely different exam when it comes to the materials.
Yes.
And I don't seem to really know how to go about it because it
No.
seems like it requires more study time.
Absolutely. The AZ-500 exam is focused on security of Azure, whereas the AZ-104 exam is focused on Azure. So you're not wrong in saying it's very different. The AZ-500 exam, which congratulations for passing, I failed that the first time out. That's a tough exam. So good for you for passing that. The AZ-104, my biggest recommendation is to actually go into, and I'll give you all the links as well, AZ-104 course, read through the course material. So look at the learn modules, go through them. The other thing I recommend, and this is a huge one that I do for every exam, is I go in, see, Maria, I'm complaining. Every time I do a search, it comes to the study guide. What I'm looking for is the Microsoft exam page, and I have to scroll down to the next page, and there it is. I don't know why I did that. Isn't that weird? See, I was talking about
Yeah, I get it. So that's weird.
So this is the official certification page for this course, Peter. And what I would recommend is scroll down. You can also see the modules are there as well. But one of the things I always recommend is in here, there is what we call the study guide. Always look for this study guide, and I'll give you the link to this directly as well. This study guide is where I would go in, and as you scroll down, this is where you want to go into the skills measured and the skills in here. And I go like this. I highlight this and then I go search. And it takes me to something. Yeah, see, for some reason, my browser isn't defaulting to the Microsoft pages. I don't know what's going on. Or you can highlight it if you're using a Bing, highlight it, and then click on Copilot. And do this for every single bullet. This will take you a good, a couple days, 2 or 3 days, even a week, if you're really focused on the material and all that. So that's what I would do is I would go through the study guide, and I would read through the learn modules, go through the study guide, and then the next thing I would do is I would go to GitHub, and I would do a search for AZ-104. And I would look for the Microsoft Learning, and I'll give you this link directly, and then click over here, and I would do the labs. So do your hands-on as well. The hands-on is where you're really going to understand things, especially in this course, because this course is all about how, and the questions you're going to get is, how do you deploy an Azure load balancer in the correct order? Put the 3 out of the 5 steps. So if you've never done this hands-on, you're not going to pass those questions. So I highly, highly recommend that you do these labs 3 times. Do it once. You're going to be going, oh, that's interesting. Do it second time. Oh, I kind of get it. Do it third time. Hopefully by the third time, you're like, oh, I know what to do next. Or it's really sinking in. All right. So, and then do that. And then the next thing I recommend, and this is your final study step, and you do this for any exam, right, is go to Measure Up and purchase the practices test. So in here, and I'll give you the link to this, go in and purchase that practice test. It's $60 US, right? Or if you want to download it, the price jumps a bit, but it is a test pass guarantee. So if you fail the exam, you will get your money back. These practice tests, I love them because you can, as you're going through the test, if you get it wrong, if you pick something wrong, you can look it up. It tells you why it's wrong. It literally will say, this answer is wrong because, blah, well, not literally say that, but it'll say, this answer isn't right, and this answer isn't right. This answer isn't right. This answer is right because, and then it gives you links. So it's a really good study tool, but don't do the practice test until you're done all the reading and all the labs. Because if you do the practice test first, you're going to discourage yourself, right? Because you don't have that knowledge yet. Ayaka, no. You're not going to get Azure credit until our benefits are fixed. That's coming soon. We're currently in a beta. Sorry, just for anybody else, Ayaka became an MCT when our enrollment system was down, which went down in June. And so unfortunately, she doesn't get her Visual Studio subscription, which is free Azure credits. You won't be able to get that until our systems are back up, which is going to be in the next month. But right now you can open a free account in Azure, right? You can use that. Wiz Labs, Ramon, when I was working at Amazon, I used Wiz Labs, and do you know how many wrong answers there were in there? There's a lot of wrong stuff in there. Be very careful. We actually, because Amazon, AWS, and Wiz Labs were kind of in cahoots with each other. So the AWS trainers, which is what I was, we had to work with them, and we were telling them there's a lot of wrong answers in there. And that was for AWS. I've never used it for Microsoft's because that kind of put me off. So I've been using Measure Up for 20 years and it's done me well. So that's why I always talk about it.
Yeah, you also have the practice assessment on Learn. And if you do those, make sure you do them, get 80% 3 times. I did it, for example, a prep for the AZ-500. So I took the practice assessment and I took it 3 times. I did them over and over until I got 80% all 3 times when I went through it. You will not see, the only thing, you will not see the same type of questions in the exam. It's just to help you, give you that variety. So if you can answer all of these, then you will have a good chance to go through this. But one of the downside of this is that you don't have the proper exam experience. So you don't get to put things in the correct order. These are just single choice or multiple choice questions.
Yeah. Yeah, the AZ-104, like even when you go back to that page, there's launch the sandbox. So when you launch the sandbox, it's going to give you an idea of, the different types of questions that you're going to get. Right. So, and it's not the exam itself, it's just examples. Right? You can see this is kind of like what the exam experience is like. And you can see in here the different types of questions. Come on. There's your multiple choice, and then multiple choice with multiple answers. And then you've got your drag and drop, right? So that's another question you'll get. and so on. So yeah, so go through the exam sandbox. So, and this is the placement. You got to pick where it should be. And that will give you an idea of what type of questions you'll get. I didn't realize the time. We're over time. Got talking there. Any other questions? We don't have to drop right away, but if there's no other questions, then we'll drop. I'm asking if there's any questions and I won't stop talking. That's typical Sarah. I'll pause there. Our 9-second, right, Maria? No questions. Okay, I get to talk again. No,
yeah, and hope this gets you better prepared, that you know more how to more tackle when it comes to case study, and also more on how to prep as well. AZ-104 links. Yeah, Sarah, you gave them all the good links here.
Yeah, if you want, how many of you are looking to tackle AZ-104 in the near future? Want us to do an office hours on that next? We can come back. That one was really popular. We did that. We had like over 50 people in that one.
Yeah, we can do that
run
because
that one again.
Yeah, because that covers so much that help people prep for 305, 700. I mean, like SC courses. Yeah, it's a lot of.
Oh, nice, Barbara. Yeah, I shared this link to register in LinkedIn because I was like, ugh, I'm so sick of people having to join the learning room all the time. It's not fair for everybody in LinkedIn if you don't have time to join the learning room. But yeah, once you get into the learning room, it looks, like this. I'll show you. Whoops. So this is what you're looking at in the learning room. So you'll see all of these channels, and currently this is that one. So every time, and then soon I'll be posting, Maria and I will figure out our schedules and we'll post an AZ-104 office hours in here. So it's just a Teams with all these different course channels. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining. Thanks, Maria. What time is it for you now?
Yeah, it's just 3:10. And yeah, so Gary, have 104, 305 on your to-do list. Yeah, no, the practice. Yeah, so have a look at the credentials for you who need to practice. Yeah.
Yeah, the credentials are good. And then doing the GitHub labs for sure. That'll help with that visual kinesthetic practice. All right, so we'll keep your eye out in the learning room. There'll be more office hours coming out. I know Jason's doing one in the next couple of weeks, AZ-801. So that's the hybrid exam. If you guys are doing anything with hybrid or migration, I'd recommend joining that. And Jason can talk like we all can. All right, everybody. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Take care. Good luck on your exams.
Yep. Good luck.